Hello, boys and girls. This is Mrs. Carla, and I'm the math lady, and I'm going to help you understand fractions a little bit better. We're just starting out with fractions now, and if you helped your mom or your teacher make your little fraction plates, you can see that I have all of my fraction plates over here on the side of my board. I have my 12ths, and my 12/12ths make a whole. I have my 6th, and 6 of those make a whole. I have my 5ths, and 5 of those make a whole. I have my 4ths, and 4 of those make a whole. Down here are some 8ths, and 8 of those make a whole. And there are some 3rds. It takes 3 of those to make a whole. And there are my 10ths. And it takes 10 of those to make a whole. So we're going to do some little problems here on the board. And this first problem that I have for you says Susie and Abby want to share a pizza. Here's a whole pizza. If they split it right down the middle, how much pizza will they both get? Well, if we split it right down the middle, then we have a half a pizza and a half a pizza, and 2 halves make a whole. If we were going to make that a math sentence, we would say 1 half plus 1 half equals 1 whole. Here's problem number 2. Mrs. Carla has only 3 people for supper tonight. She made a strawberry pie for dessert. 1 pie, 1 whole for 3 people. Wow, that's a lot of pie. So each person will get, dropped one of my thirds of pie, 1/3 of a piece of pie. Because 1/3 and 1/3 and 1/3 together make 1 whole pie. So our equation, our mathematical sentence would be 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3 equals, when you put the 3/3 together, don't they equal 1 whole pie? So 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3, oh, they're all sticking together, is equal to 3/3, which is 1 whole pie. Yum! Here's our next problem. There are 4 people in the Smith family. They will share a casserole. Mom will divide 1 whole into 4 equal parts. Each part will be 1/4 of the whole. So we can see that 1/4 and 1/4 and 1/4 and 1/4 all make 1 whole, and 1/4 means 1 out of 4 equal parts. So that if I had 2 of them, I would have 2/4, which, if you look at it, also makes a half. If I have 3/4, 3 of them, I have 3/4 of a whole. And 4/4, now I can't hold them together. 4/4 make 1 whole casserole. Okay, let's look at the next one. Here's my whole. First, cut it in half. Cut it in half. I have how many halves make a whole? 2 halves make a whole. or 1/2 plus 1/2 is 2 halves equals 1 whole. Make it look like 1. Then cut each half in half. How many pieces do I have when I cut a half, each half in half? Now I have 4, and each part is called a fourth because there are 4 of them in a whole. How many fourths in a whole? There are 4 fourths in a whole. And my equation would be 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 is 4/4 equals 1 whole. Here I fixed my board with 8/8 equals 1 whole. Each one of these parts is 1 out of 8 pieces. The 8 equal pieces make a whole. We call this an eighth. All right, so let's look and see if we can fill in these boxes. How many fourths is 1/2? Well, here's a half, and we'll put that on the board right there. And how many fourths would it take to equal 1/2? If I put those 2 fourths over the 1/2, will they equal? So 2 fourths is the same thing as 1/2. 2 fourths is 1/2. How many fourths is 1 whole? Well, when we look at our whole fourths and take away our half, remember, fourths mean that there are 4 equal parts to make a whole. So there's our 4 fourths making a whole. So 4 fourths make 1 whole. How many eighths are equal to 1/4? Okay, so here is 1/4. Here are my eighths. Wow, it looks like an eighth is half of a fourth. Let's see. If we take our fourth and we put an eighth on top of it, and we have another eighth over here, do they equal each other? So we have 1/8 and another eighth. 2 eighths equals 1/4. And how many eighths equals 1/2? All right, so here we have our eighths, and here we have a half. Let's just hold our half over here. Let's get y'all a little closer so that you can see the eighths there. How many eighths is the same size as a half? What do you think? 4 eighths is 1/2, isn't it? 4 eighths is 1/2. Fractions are easy, aren't they? Our lesson is almost over on fraction concepts and the meaning of fractions. So we're almost there. Now, 1/2, remember, looks like this. How many fourths does it take to equal and be the same amount as 1/2? Well, we know that 1/4 and 1/4 put together are the same shape as 1/2. In fact, a fourth is a half cut in half. So 1/2 is 2/4. Now, let's think. The same half is how many eighths? Well, here are my eighths over here. If I take my half, which is the same as 2/4, and I put an eighth and another eighth, how many do you think I'm going to need? And an eighth and another eighth. How many eighths are the same size as a half? Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 eighths is 1/2. All right, so now the next one, 1/4 is how many eighths? Well, 2 eighths is the same size as 1/4. If we put those 2 eighths on top of the 1/4, they exactly cover the 1/4. So 2 eighths, 1/4 is 2 eighths. Now, 2/4 is what we had here, right? We had 2/4 before we put the eighths on there. Let's get that back off of there. We had 2/4, and 2/4 is the same thing as a half, but 2/4 is how many eighths? Remember, we just put on 4 eighths here and then just took them off again. 4 eighths is the same size as 2/4, which is the same size as 1/2. So 4 eighths is the same size. Now down here, we have 3/4. So let's take off some of these. We have a 1/4 and a 1/4, and we have one more 1/4. So now that we have 3/4 here, can you tell me how many eighths we need to be the same thing as 3/4? Each fourth, remember, is 2 eighths. Can you count by twos? 2, 4, 6. Let's put them on here. We need 6 eighths to be the same thing as 3/4. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 eighths is the same thing as 3/4. And this is Mrs. Carla, the math lady, and I want you to understand that fractions are fun. God bless.